Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Are you ready to explore the unknown? Dive into the world of the strange, mysterious, and unexplained with Eerie Expeditions magazine. Each issue is packed with spine-tingling tales, cutting-edge paranormal investigations, and exclusive insights into hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and more. Whether you're a seasoned investigator or just love a good ghost story, Eerie Expeditions magazine has something for you. Join our growing community of truth seekers and adventure lovers. Subscribe today at EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com and unlock the secrets of the supernatural. Are you ready? That's EerieExpeditionsMagazine.com, where the extraordinary is just a click away. Dare to discover.
What's out there? What creates the shadows in the corners or the creatures of the dark? Who are those on the other side? What do they have to say? This is the Gateway Podcast. This is not your normal style of paranormal talk radio. Brought to you live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans.
Welcome to the Gateway, you guys. We're broadcast live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm so glad to see all you guys here. Again, you're all back. Hello, hello from Las Vegas. You've been listening to the wonderful host, Sean Kelly, from his show Into the Night. If you missed it, you can catch him again on Sundays. It's been raining here in Vegas, but it's been really nice the last few days. I have a little bit of food of thought for you guys. So over the weekend, I went hiking through the Valley of Fire State Park. It's about 40 minutes outside of Las Vegas. And if you ever visit Las Vegas, I strongly suggest renting a car and taking a ride out there. It's pretty neat. But one of the things I was looking for, the area is known for its petroglyphs. They're everywhere. They're written all over the walls, and it's just a really neat place. But one of the petroglyphs I found is this lone spiral. And it's interesting because you see these spirals all over the world in the ancient world. They're everywhere. They're on buildings from ancient Greece. You see them in ancient Egypt. They're in Ireland. They're in petroglyphs. And here, I'll show you guys one. This is what I'm talking about. This is from over the weekend. My question to you is, what do these symbols mean? What do you think they mean? I'm going to post this on my Facebook later on tonight, and it's going to be real interesting to see what you guys have to say and what you think this means. So this was on one of the rocks, but if you look, this one here, I think this is from Rome, but look at that. Same symbol, different culture. This is another one. I forget where this one's from. Somewhere over in Europe. And then again, these are from Europe, but just to give you guys an example, I might do a whole show on the theology and meanings of symbolism in ancient cultures, but take a look at those. I'll have them posted later tonight. And again, it's going to be real interesting to see what everyone says about that. My guest tonight, she's the owner of the Enfield House in Connecticut, not to be confused with the one that is in Europe. But the Enfield House remains one of the most bizarre locations that I heard of in a long time. And I have to read you guys the intro to this. So the infamous Enfield House in Connecticut was built in 1771, and it became known for the most intense hauntings in modern paranormal history. After Mackenzie, that's the name of the person that's going to be on. After her family purchased this home in the fall of 2006, unexplained and terrifying events quickly escalated into a battle for their very souls. It's going to be really interesting to hear about this. Over the years, the house drew attention from top names in the field, such as John Zaffis and even the late Lorraine Warren, who actually declined to go back into the house after hearing the severity of the case. Despite the visits from over 10 priests, that's right, 10 priests, guys, a Native American shaman, and even a witch, the entity remained. It wasn't until 2015 that Reverend Neil Farley and exorcist Jay Dodd made a breakthrough during a 2-day confrontation with the entity, I'm assuming, later supported by Bishop Robert McKenna. Still, the entity remained in this house. So what did they do? They proposed turning this property into a place of learning and experiences, well, research. So Mackenzie joins me tonight. Let me get her on here. Mackenzie, welcome to the show. It looks like the whole family joined me.
Thank you. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, we figured we are going to give you a great show because there's some history that Mackenzie doesn't know.
Yeah, no, they're the first ones.
And some other things. So go ahead, Mackenzie.
I'm really excited to have you guys all on here. So Mackenzie, you're the one that runs the business, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's really, are you guys in the house right now?
We are. We are.
So is there stuff going on around you right now?
Pretty quiet. Yeah. That's dog. Yeah, the dog acts weird. Other than that, I didn't notice anything. Last night we had a friend over and we were playing around and some weird stuff came through. So it was kind of, yeah.
What do you
Be
mean by
scared.
weird stuff? Just like paranormal activity?
Well, I called out a lot of names and like people who were here before. So we knew kind of like, okay, this is not some computer glitch. And and it called out a couple times evil. And so, but I really think they're playing games because I really don't think we have any demonic entities here anymore. So I really think this was kind of like we have 2 little kids here, and they really like to play tricks and.
Got it. So do you guys did have demonic entities in this house, right?
That's questionable. I mean,
That's questionable. Okay.
yeah, like define demonic. That's the thing. It's like everybody runs out there says it's a demon. But when I studied and I talked to a lot of people, and when you think about what a demon is, it's a fallen angel, and these guys are like 12 feet tall. So when I always think of a demon, they could take you out with one swat of a hand, and they do have supernatural power. So I don't want to say it was a demon, whereas more it's of a highly intelligent entity, maybe that wreak havoc. Does it make any sense?
Is it sort of like the Bell Witch?
Over the years, it has stumped me many times because it was not afraid to mess with priests. One priest, it literally took its rosaries out of his pocket to put it back in. With Bishop McKenna, he lost his voice for 3 months, and he wasn't able to come in. Then when he did come in, it actually took his bottle of holy water and hit it on him in front of 10 people.
Wow.
It's not afraid of anything religious. It's not afraid of priests. So
he ripped the old Bible. I had the old Bible from my grandmother, and we had the night before. We had that was actually the worst night we had, where an investigator was throwing through the room. And that night we were also with Lorraine Warren on the phone, and she gave us advice to do what to do, and like playing some monk music and burn sage, where we decided, I'm like, oh, I don't know, we thought we're not qualified to do this. Kind of like we played the music, but we didn't do the sage burning. We took it actually off for the day. But when we came home, on our bed, the whole bed was covered with sage. Someone took sage and crumpled it all over the bed. I went in the kids' room, what was at that point was the nursery, because they were 1.5 years, And I had my grandmother's old Bible way on top of the closet. Nobody could have reached it. And it was laying on the floor and it was shredded in 1,000 pieces. So
Oh,
that
wow.
so that was kind of like, well, what do you want to do? I have no respect for anything, and you can go. I mean, he heard it a couple times where he said that hocus pocus doesn't work with me.
That was what made me really believe, because of my background. Takes a lot to scare me. But this one night, there was an investigator. His name was Orlando Ferrante. He ran a group, and he was friends with Tony Spira, Lorraine, and Judy. And that night, they had an ordained minister in the house. They had a photographer, and the reason why I mentioned her weight is not for any reason, but to show you how powerful this entity was. She was about 5'2", about 250 pounds, and she was taking photos. They were downstairs and they were channeling spirit. Now, at first, I'm like, bravo, anybody can do theatrical. But what got me was when the guy, he said, I'll show you, he grabbed his arm and he started to bite his arm, and he literally started to bleed. He was literally almost biting the flesh of his arm. And I said, you know what, that takes some kind of pain tolerance. But when they provoked this entity, they said, do something. They said, do something. It's my 5-year-old son can blow out a candle, do something. Well, we heard a loud smash and a bang, and I ran up there almost like a first responder. I wanted to see what's going on. And this lady was blowing about 8 feet. He picked her up. When I talked to the ordained minister, he was pale. He said, 1 minute, this lady's standing there and taking photos. The next minute, he goes, she was like a rag doll. It picked her up and threw her down the hall. And it smashed her shoulder in the door jamb. And she had a really expensive camera and blew it all the way across the room. Well, years later, as we were working, I realized, you know what? That entity wasn't aiming for the door jamb. If she missed the door jamb by two inches, she would have hit the wall and went straight down the stairs and probably would have been killed. So that's
Wow.
kind of how powerful this entity showed itself that one time.
Wow.
And we don't know either if it's if it was something. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was evil, but it never showed himself. Kind of, we had a lot of psychics and mediums, and everyone that said, yeah, we got close to it, but it never showed themselves. Kind of like whatever that was kind of like. I heard one told me kind of like it's really hairy. I noticed that what I thought, and like I thought he has hooves because I was doing clothes changing for the season, and I was up in the attic, and I come down, and after a while you learn if you're welcome somewhere or not. So at the beginning I always got scratched. Now I'm at the point I open the door and I feel kind of like, okay, not today. I close the door and like I come back the next time. But there was kind of like I did it and I came down, and all of a sudden I heard something following me, and it went to the whole bedroom, but it didn't sound like it's on the floor. It sounded like it goes around the wall, and it sounded for me kind of like hoofs going along. So I don't know, whatever this thing is.
It was
Kind of like a
and it had the power to attack people in the early days. When I mean attack, it didn't just hurt them. It created heart attacks. It created havoc in some of people's lives. And actually, one person we believe actually had a heart attack and died trying to help us.
Do they believe that it's from? Do you believe that's from the entity?
We believe so. I will give you a quick example because as you can probably
We
find
have
out,
multiple people. That's why we kind of like thinking maybe it has something to do with it, because we have about 4 people who did something or helped ended up with serious heart issues, and one of them passed away. We have a lot of them who only fight now with.
One of them had the actual gentleman. I'm not going to mention his name. He was a friend of mine. He was an attorney, and he was actually working with us, and he wanted to get us out of the house, and he was working really hard, and then he invited us to his early Christmas party that we used to go to, and I feel bad because I told him, my last words to him were, you know what, I got toddlers home now. Let me see what we can do. And that was in the early October, and we got caught up having 3-year-old kids and things like that. Well, 2010 came up, and that was the worst year ever. My brother died. We don't know how he died. A week later, Elke's dog, Germany, had passed away. Another week after that, my sister had passed away. So 2010 was rough, and I was actually going back to college. I actually took a leave of absence from work, and I wanted to go back to college. And that summer, I got a phone call, and they said, "Are you Jay Elke?" And I said, "Yes." No, I thought, because I have friends and they play really sick jokes sometimes. And they said, "I'm attorney so-and-so. I'm handing the estate of so-and-so." I'm like, "Get out of here." I said, "Did Mike put you up to this?" And he's like, "No, Jay." He goes, Mike's gone." He said, in the fall of 2009, he was teaching softball and had a massive heart attack and died on the spot.
Oh, wow.
And that year, it was devastating. I mean, after losing half my family, Elke's dog, and then losing a really good friend of mine.
From the house.
And and it seemed like, one too many coincidences just to be a coincidence. Even, and Jay Dodd that we hear about on those 2 days, I did matter of fact, Jay Dodd did I got Jay Dodd on the Greg Balkan radio show. Greg, I've known Greg for years, and he told his story. But what happened was, he came up, and he was at one time he was a highway patrolman, state trooper for Indiana, and as soon as he decided to take this case, everything you could imagine came at him. And when he was here, he had to leave several times because he was getting really strange headaches. But what really got him was after he left, my daughter at the time, Courtney, would talk to him, and she would say, "Mr. Dodd, I need your help," and he would work with her. But one day he says, "Courtney, can I talk to your father?" He goes, "I can't help you anymore." And I'm like, "What's going on, Jay?" I said, "Is everything okay?" He goes, "I had a heart attack and died 3 times. That brought me back." He goes, "Here's what happened." He goes, "The entity from your house came, sat on my bed in like a dreamlike state, and told me to back away. And he says, I'm a man of God. I know who you are." And he said, get behind me, Satan." And the entity says, "I will show you." A week later, he had a series of heart attacks, but he died. They brought him back. He died. And while he was in the hospital, he opened his eyes and saw this entity sitting at the end of his bed and said to him, "Do you know who I am now? Now I want you to back away." And he won't tell me what happened, but he said there was a deal struck. And all he said is that as long as he stays away from the paranormal, that this entity is supposed to stay away from us.
So there was a deal made with your friend? Is that what you said?
It was
between the entity and
I guess this entity went to him, to Jay, and said, Jay Dodd, and said, now you know who I am, type of thing. And Jay Dodd won't tell me what happened, but there was a deal where he said as long as he stays away from the paranormal and helping us out, that the entity promised to stay away from the house. But after that, still didn't stop attacking him. He went after his girlfriend. He went after a lot of people he loved, and you see this in a lot of the stories that we have, where in the early days it went after a lot of seasoned paranormal investigators.
I have
Well,
actually.
with all of that going on, are you guys not afraid to be in the house?
Oh, we are. We tried moving 3 times. People don't realize that we tried moving 3 times, and every time we try to move, it would stop us. And so finally, once we believe that this entity's gone, we have human spirits here. But in the beginning, that's why I said it was a fight for our very soul. It was not a joke. Orlando Ferrante, who worked with the Warrens, to this day, he will not put one foot in this house.
Tell me about Lorraine Warren and what happened that she won't go into the house.
Well, that night, there was about 8 investigators here. Orlando Ferrante ran a group called CPRS, and he had his partner. Well, after the lady got picked up and thrown down the hall, Orlando had Lorraine on standby, and Lorraine was a smart lady, very sweet, very elegant lady, very classy. They called her up and they said, "We need you." They said, "This is a very rare case. This is a real deal." They said, "We've witnessed levitation, scratching." And she paused and she says, "Orlando, what? You're not telling me everything. What are you leaving out?" Orlando said, "Lorraine, he says it picked up one of our investigators and threw her 8 feet down the hall." And she paused and she says, "I am so sorry." She says, "I cannot put one foot in the house." She goes, "Tell the family I'm sorry. I will work with them by phone, give them my phone number, and I will talk to them." But she goes, "I cannot come out to that house ever." And to the day she died, she never came out. 2 weeks later, she actually gave a lecture down the street up at Anson-on-Tuck Community College. But she wouldn't. And years later, I actually got a text message. I actually copied from Orlando. I talked with him and I says, "What does Lorraine think it was?" And he says, "Lorraine thinks it was a very powerful demon." And he says he's trying to work with Tony and some other people to see if he could help us. And then when Jay Dodd came in, Orlando
But
was
I think
too
too
scared at the end.
with Lorraine was too, Ed was already passed away. And Lorraine got up in age. I mean, she got older. And I think this played a big factor too, kind of like that she kind of like said, "I'm going to give you advice over the phone."
Yeah.
So I don't think she didn't do any cases in that
Severe.
form anymore. So I think there was a big role too, that Ed was already gone and she was up in age too.
Got it.
But we understood.
Well, take us back to the beginning. What were some of the things that you experienced in the very beginning that was right after your family moved into the house?
Well, it started that when we were not even moved in yet, and we looked at the house, and we came with 2 separate cars. So I was out first. I was 7 months pregnant, and I went down the stairs, and he said it looked like you got pushed. I can't remember anymore because it went all so fast. The only thing is what I noticed, kind of like I started tripping and kind of like I made it down the stairs, but at the end then I kind of like fell. But thank God I didn't fall on my stomach. But he said what weird was when you started going down the stairs, you put your hands in the back. So almost like someone from the back gave me the reaction was not going kind of like with my hands in the front. I was kind of
arms went like this, and it looked like somebody had shoved her. And all I heard was her saying, "Jay, help me."
But this was not an indication for us that there is something wrong with the house. There was kind of like I wouldn't say that at this point we were thinking there's something wrong. I mean, we were living here a couple months, and we still kind of, well, we started watching because Caps came out, so all these paranormal shows started, and we watched them. But I have to admit, at this point, nobody, Jay or I, believed in paranormal. So it was just kind of like it started off that stuff was missing, keys were misplaced, wallets were misplaced, or you heard noises where we tried to explain, but man, it's an old house, it's kind of, but then it got a little bit more aggressive where, kind of like you saw shadows, and but we still didn't really start talking about it. And then one day we went out for lunch, and I said, "Hey, I have to ask you something because this is weird. I have all these weird experiences, and someone even opens up the dryer and throws the clothes out, and I'm kind of like, I don't know." So he said, "You too." So that's where we started kind of like exchanging what everyone had experienced. And but then we went to the point kind of like this was 2007, and like this was not like we had only telephone books, the internet was not that, and finding a paranormal group was kind of like not easy either.
Yeah.
So we started off calling our local priest. This was kind of like our first choice. And then we went through a lot of couple in paranormal groups, because I really think when all these shows came out, all these paranormal groups were created, and then they came, and then they had an experience, and then when we said, they said, "Oh, we have enough. We're gonna come back and we're gonna let you know," and then we didn't see them anymore. So this was kind of like the beginning of it.
So as this is happening, I decided to go down to the town hall, and I wanted to see.
Hey guys, real
Yep.
quick, I'm getting kind of like an echoey feedback from you guys. Do you have like a radio or like the Facebook page open or anything like that?
Do you have any open cams? She's great on our tech thing. Oh no, we lost her. Oh, hang on.
No, I know.
That's nice.
You're still there.
Okay.
It sounds a lot better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what happened was I decided to handle this like it as a investigation. I went down to the city hall, and I went down and I met the manager of the works department, and I asked her. I said, "Can I have a copy of everyone that had lived in a house?" So she said, "Sure." She goes, "It's going to be $1 a copy." So the lady was really nice, and she starts running over and getting these big volumes, open them up, right, and scrolling down, and then about a half hour into it, she stopped. She says, she says, "This is going to get really expensive because we haven't even got out of the 20th century, and a lot of people owned your house." She goes, "How about this? I'll write on a piece of paper here, of everybody that had owned your house. And if there's anything wrong, I'll call you." So I gave her my office number. I gave her my beeper number, everything. Gave her my home number. A week later, she calls up. I'm at work. I close my door, and she's like, "You know what? There was a guy that committed a murder-suicide that lived in your house." And I'm like, "Oh, no." But she goes, "Well, there's good news. There was a guy that lived there from 1963 to 2000. He must have had a great life." So as she started going back, and back, it was like the house was a hot potato, and she got hooked on it. So she also had access to people's death records. So she got hooked on it like a soap opera. She said, "Your house is weird." So what she did is she wrote on a piece of paper the people who bought it, the date they bought it, the amount they bought it, and the volume where you can locate it at the city hall.
Was Was it resold like every couple years or
It
something?
was sold every couple
Yeah.
of years, and out of 200 and something odd years, only one person died of natural causes in the house. That was a lady in 1900. Her name was Marion Arnott. They said she died from bronchial pneumonia peacefully in her house. We dug up a lot of newspaper articles to verify a lot of things, and it went all the way back to the founding father of the town. His name was Henry Thompson, and the first recording we can find is 1846. And the reason why we believe there's no other recordings is because we believe his grandfather was the one, Matthew Thompson, built the house in 1771. And the weird part about, again, nothing's normal in this house. The weird part about this house was when he built it, we're like about a quarter mile, half mile away from the Connecticut River, which, goes all the way to Canada and it empties out at the Long Island Sound. Well, that was used from the French Canadian fur trappers to Native Americans to highwaymen, the people, we had French and Indian wars all through here. So to build a house out of the mainstream, instead of building it down where all the other village would have been, was kind of weird, because he could have been robbed, he could have been killed, he could have got caught up in like a little skirmish. But they built the house here, and it stayed in the family. And I think, and the main reason I think they sold it was because Henry's father became the richest man in Connecticut, and he started a series of carpet mills known as Bigelow. I forgot their name, Bigelow Hartford Carpet Mills. They were famous, and he had a 33-acre plantation down on Route 5. And Henry himself was an inventor. He did very well, and he lived in New Haven and New York City. So I think what happened was they didn't need another house, and I think they decided to sell it. And that's where we see C.L. Thomas. That's where we see the horrific things start happening. The very first guy who buys it, Horace Abbey, he buys it on May 11th of 1846. Well, a couple of years later, he dies February 22nd, 1849. They found him in a pool of blood. They listed it as cerebral hemorrhaging.
Do you believe that that's from the house?
Well, we don't know. I mean, because the bodies start stacking up. So you start questioning yourself. I mean, again, is it just a coincidence? Is it
multiple people?
Yeah.
Cerebral hemorrhaging.
Multiple cerebral hemorrhaging, heart attack. So it starts out where this guy seems like a natural, okay, the guy died, maybe he slipped, he fell, maybe he bled out. He had a wife and daughter, but now his other daughter marries a wealthy man who they own Lovejoy Ferry. She builds a house right next to us, a big gray house, 33 Prospect Street. And Colleen pulls her death record. And she doesn't die of old age. She dies from burns over her whole entire body. She burnt to death. So that was his daughter. The house
She burned to death?
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
She burned to death? Was there a fire that caused that?
Yeah, she burned to death. Do we have her? I think we have her death record. Yeah, really weird. So some people collect dolls and things like that. We have death records. Really weird.
But you actually, you asked earlier if we had something about it. What you saw today in the cellar. That was actually something. I totally forgot about it.
I went to go downstairs in the cellar to go grab something, and I ran into the girl again. And then she was just down there, just chilling down there. I don't know why she was down there. I mean, it was kind of odd that she was.
She sees for the last 10 years
Yeah.
or so or longer. She sees a girl in a nightgown. And at the beginning, when she was little, we saw the babysitter showed her the ring because she described the girl a little bit from that movie. And we kind of like, yeah, right. And then until Jay saw it, I'm kind of like, oh my God, she really sees it. And I guess because yesterday with our spirit session, I think we woke her up. But I also talked today to my friend in Germany. She's a really good medium. She works actually for the government to do cold cases. And she's also a born legacy. And she was asking, how did it go? Because they closed the portal. And she said, oh, that girl shows themselves, right? And I'm kind of like, yeah, she does. Mackenzie actually saw her today. And she said, yeah, she's a little bit mad because she tries to open up a portal. She said, you have to be careful. That's another person where we're actually got she was helping with her team, started last year, kind of like looking into the house and to see what it is. And then they got multiple warnings not to dig any more further in the house and over the spirit box. And so her team member said, Iris, stop. Iris, stop. And she's kind of like, no, she's my friend. I want to know what it is. I want to know what's in the house. So it got quiet. I didn't hear from her for a while. So I went to one of her team members and I said, is Iris okay? I don't usually talk to her at least once a week. I said, I'm disappeared. What happened? She said, oh, you didn't hear? I'm kind of like, no. She had actually a massive heart attack and died a couple times. So when her husband would have been home, she would have actually passed away. So when she got better, she has no heart conditions. So I asked her afterwards when she got better, I asked her, I said, do you think this had something to do with the house? She said, no, 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 no. But I don't really believe that because today she said again too, she said, well, let Mackenzie write down what she all sees and let's see what we're gonna do with it because you know, I can't do much. You know, I got my warning. I cannot. And when she started a couple months helping and getting a little bit more active again, her heart function went down again. So she was actually over the point where she didn't need a pacemaker. And then all of a sudden, when she started doing more work in the house again to figure it out what it is, her heart function went down again. So she still denies it. It has nothing to do with it, but I don't believe it.
Have you guys ever contacted the people that you bought the house from to see if they've experienced anything?
Yes. Well, I actually, the people who we bought the house of, I actually worked with her, and so she actually told me that year that they sold us the house was the worst year of their life.
Really?
I don't want to say too much because they're still out there, but let's put it this
Yeah.
way. She said their dog died. Her husband lost his job.
His business.
His business. There was a lot of personal things that happened to her.
Health went
Really
down.
bad health issues. She goes, it was just like we were cursed. As soon as we got rid of that house, she goes, I don't believe in the paranormal, but she goes, it was like we were being attacked by something. It was like one thing right after another. And so they finally sold their house. I mean, they didn't even, I mean, they lived in close to the airport and they actually sold their house and they ended up moving down by the shore. And just to kind of get away because when she started hearing the stories I was telling her when I would come into work and we'd be having board meetings, I would say, hey, that house you sold me is messed up. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I would start telling her stories. And
There were actually warning signs there. When she told us the story, they had, when they owned the house, they rented it out to two brothers with their family. And they were, had the option rent to buy. So they actually wanted to buy the house. And he wanted to help that they're getting the house. And they didn't hear from him. And then she got the keys in the mail. They moved out overnight and never said anything. They just left. And our neighbor told us weeks before they did that, in the middle of the night, they went outside with a chainsaw and took every single tree down in the yard. They took down the garage in the middle of the night. And he said, our neighbor said, I think they lost it. And then 2 weeks later, she got the keys in the mail and they left. So there was, we heard the story, but again, kind of like, okay, nice. So, but then when we signed our paper for, when we went to the lawyer to sign the paper for the selling, for buying the house, and the lawyer said, oh, we need a year of house insurance. And I'm kind of like, because I never wanted the house. So when I was sitting there, I'm kind of like, great, I don't have the money. I put every single penny in it. I don't have any money left to pay the house insurance. And I'm kind of like, yeah. And then John said, you know what? I give you a housewarming gift. I'm going to pay you the house insurance. And again, he didn't hand it her. So on the way out, we heard him saying to his lawyer, thank God I got rid of the house. And I'm kind of like, oh, great. So.
But it was a constant battle because, like I said, it was one thing after another. It's like if I went through this whole list, it would take hours, but it was bought, sold. I mean, and they didn't have the old house in the 1850s, and it went into someone would buy it, someone would die, they would sell it, someone would buy it, someone would die. Then it was stayed in a family for many years in the 1850s and 60s, and one by one, they just started to get picked off, and whole entire families were like eradicated within a year. They would die from just weird things. And you want to say, was it coincidence? Was it paranormal? But then when you see, like, the house took revenge on his family in the 1960s. Everything that happened to somebody from the 1800s up befell this family. This one gentleman, I talked to his brother, was actually a surviving son, the guy. He said, my brother wasn't born mentally challenged. He said he fell down these stairs and hit his head so hard that he had to wear a special helmet. This was back in this is like the early 70s. He goes to, which is now Six Flags, was called Riverside Amusement Park. Colleen looked it up and said a little boy went through a mysterious seizure and dies. His other daughter goes out in 1986 and with her boyfriend, and they gas themselves down the road. In 2000, their other son, who was a Glastonbury police officer, goes to work early in the morning. Probably say, good morning, guys. Good morning to his watch commander. Sits down, pulls out his revolver, and shoots himself in the head. Several months after that, his other brother goes out to the garage or the barn that's no longer here, and he hangs himself.
Oh, wow.
Everybody, and when now,
4 kids out of the 5.
and then when you look at how other people died, it's really creepy. Like, for example, Horace Abbey, the first guy who I told you about, was dead on February 22nd, 1849. The police officer, guess what day he shot himself in the head? February 22nd, 2000. Their son, the guy who hung himself, right, the gangster that lived here, committed the murders on June 11th, 1930. He actually hung himself, I think, was it June 11th, 2000. So it's kind of weird that there be the same dates popping up through history.
Are you afraid that something's going to happen to you?
Oh, definitely. Like I said, we tried moving out 3 times. Like I said, the first time we tried moving out, that year I lost my brother, my sister, Elke's dog, my best friend. The second time we tried moving out, I was going to transfer with my company down to Charlotte, North Carolina. We were looking for a house down in Rockville, South Carolina. My God, I travel so much I can't remember half the places I travel to. All of a sudden, it was matter of fact, May 5th, 2015. I took the day off. I went for my physical. On the way home, I was in a severe car accident, and it left me disabled. It blew all my discs out of my neck and my back. And so, needless to say, I ended up on disability. I couldn't function, work properly. A couple years after that, we decided we were going to move again, this time down to Virginia. We were 2 weeks away from moving. We were going to rent a nice house. We had everything packed up. My daughter Courtney said, "No more spooky." I'm like, "No more spooky." Within less than 2 weeks, I get a phone call from the realtor. Says, "Oh my God." She goes, "I don't want to make this phone call." She goes, "The people who owned the house, the property, decided not to rent it." And she says, "I'm sorry." I said, I told the schools, I told the electric company, everything. We were leaving. I literally had to unpack the whole entire house. All of us, the kids were crying. They were like, "We're never going to get away from spooky."
It's almost as if the house is keeping you there.
It's sometimes
That's very
like
troublesome. That's very troublesome.
It's very scary.
You described that this house, the events that happened in this house became a battle for your soul.
Yeah.
Can you describe some of the events that happened, and is that still happening?
Well, the good news, we believe that this entity is gone. We believe that the human spirits are still here. They'll never leave. What happened to me, what made me really believe, like I said, I faced death many times when I was younger. I've seen horrific things. I've seen people die. You know, you kind of go numb. But what got me was we went to bed one night, and Elke fell asleep, and I'm just laying there thinking, and I hear, my heart started racing because somebody came in, somebody broke in the house. So I reached over to where my drawer was, and I put my hand on my weapon, and I'm always scared, especially having small kids in the house. So I just had my hand on it, and I heard, and my heart's going faster. And all of a sudden, I see this woman standing there with long, blonde, natty hair. Her face was pale. She had on this long, like white grayish dress, was torn on the bottom. She was carrying these like old-fashioned, like high heel shoes. They were open toe, and I said, "That's really weird." I said, "Oh my God!" And she turned and she said, "There is no God." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm dreaming." And then
all the things, that's what she says.
Yeah, and it was like, what the heck? I'm like, I'm dreaming. In a matter of like a nanosecond, it jumps on my chest, grabs my arms, right? So I go to yell for her, like she's gonna save me. I have no voice. So I'm taking as I'm fighting this thing off me, I'm taking my elbow, wailing Elke in the back, like, "Please wake up, for the love of God, wake up." And I'm like, "Wake up." I said, "God help me." And she goes, "I told you there is no God." I said, "There is a God." And get off me. And all of a sudden, I was like, she was gone. I dozed off. I woke up in the morning to go to work. And all of a sudden, my wrists were sore. I'm like, man, what a bad dream. I look at my wrist, and I got black and blues of handprints on each side of my hands. That's how hard she held me, that she actually left black and blues. And she woke up, I showed her, and she goes, "What the hell happened to you?" I said, "I'll tell you the story after." I picked up the phone, I called in work, I said, "I'm taking today off." And my wrist was sore for a good week, but to see that thing, I could still see her face. And it almost like she came from the grave. I mean, that's how we describe it nowadays, but she was pale, like grayish. And her hair was natty, but it was really weird. And that's when I started believing. I said, you know what? These entities, they don't play. If they want to hurt you, they can hurt you at any time. I had my cross ripped off my chest before. Because you always think, like I got one cross left, but you always think, that your cross and your face going to save you. And I remember one day, we were doing some things, and I actually was working with my friend Al, and he actually saw it. We were talking, and he saw my chain. This is a story I never told. My chain go up, and it looked like someone took my cross and yanked up my cross, and my cross was flying on the ground. And he just looked at me. He was like, "What the heck was that?" I said, "I think I snagged it or something." He goes, "You snagged your cross like that?" And after that, he was really reluctant to come over, but I kept because I kept increasing his money, so he worked for me.
Was any one of you more affected by this thing than anybody else in the family?
These two guys. I think Elke was affected, and I think Mackenzie, she grew up in it, but I think it had boundaries. It didn't go after the children. It went after Elke, but it showed itself to the girls.
Corey saw up too.
Yeah, that's why actually Courtney, her twin sister, doesn't want to have nothing to do with the paranormal. She's kind of like she saw, or both of them they see it, but she's kind of like me, and that's the same thing. And I always laugh because when we have investigations, and sometimes she has her bedroom on the other side up in the attic, and she comes down and she said, "Oh, they're all sitting again in my room." I'm kind of like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Yeah, I guess you have an investigation and they don't want to show themselves today because they're sitting now all in my room." Like,
Wow.
it's hard to want to. I'm kind of like, "Okay, they're sitting all in your room." I said, "You send it back." I said, "I tried."
So you went through years of having different people in the home to try to get rid of this entity. So you
Yeah.
had priests, you had Lorraine Warren's advice, you've had John Zaffis. What actually worked to make this entity leave in the end?
We were working with a gentleman by the name of Bob Baker. Bob Baker, he's the one that brought in all the high-profile priests and bishops. And Bob became like a family member, and he said, "I'm never going to leave you guys." He goes, "I'll fight to the death for you guys." He encouraged us to do as many TV shows as possible, not for fame and recognition, but he said, "Someone out there is going to see your story and know how to help you." So we did the first show on Animal Planet. That's how we got stuck with the nickname, the Demon House. We did John Zaffis' show, The Haunted Collector. And then when they resurrected the other show called A Haunting from Discovery, they
Mhm.
wanted to get in our house really bad, and they contacted Bob Baker. After they did the show, in fact, Orlando Ferrante was in that show. The stipulation was he wouldn't step 1 foot in his house, that he would do it remotely. That's how scared he was still to that day. After that, but a year after, we got a phone call from a lady that says, "My husband can help. His name is Jay Dodd, and his friend Reverend Neil Farley. They both have gifts, and they want to come out." So I talked to him. I said, I can't afford to pay you guys from Washington, D.C. to come all the way up." He said, no. He goes, "You aren't going to pay one dime." He goes, "We're going to pay for everything, the hotels, everything." He goes, we do the work of God." He goes, "We don't take one dime." And I said to him, I said, "Well, what can you do that everybody else couldn't do?" I said, "We had some of the biggest names." And he goes, "At least let us try." So now, see, this is where things get crazy. They picked a night to come up. It's supposed to be a clear, nice day. Reverend Farley picks up Jay Dodd. They're heading up here, and one of the worst storms that we had in 2015. It sleeted, it snowed, everything. Reverend Farley's like, "We got to turn around, Jay." He goes, "We're not going to make it." And Jay says, "No." He goes, "It doesn't. It wants to stop us. We're going to keep going." So they finally made it to Enfield really late. They called us up. They came over the next day. I was extremely sick. I had to go to a hospital to get a CT scan. And that night they set up a prayer chain around the world. They had people even in Israel praying for us. That was really cool.
Wow.
And they had people from all over. We didn't know that until the next day. And then they called us up and they said, "How does the house feel?" "Great, right?" And I said, at the time we had the downstairs open up. I looked up. I said, I saw the black shadow staring right at me. I said, "I'm looking at the shadow right now." And they said, "We're coming over." So, like I said, it wasn't a fun thing because now with Jay being an ex-state trooper and he starts to interrogate me, starts using tactics on me. And I'm like, I'm a good guy. He said, "Well, why?" And he goes, "Come on." He goes, "You had Bishop McKenna in here." He goes, "You had this guy." He goes, "What's your angle?" He goes, "What's your gig?" I said, "Oh my God." I said, "You're interrogating me. I should be interrogating you." And so I'm like, and all of a sudden he stops and he looks up. He goes like, "Oh my God, it's still here." He goes, "Neil," and Neil's talking to Elke, and Neil goes like, "Oh my God," because now the entity's coming down the staircase. And Jay Dodd starts saying some prayers. Neil says some prayers, and he's like, "I am so sorry, brother." He goes, I didn't mean to like that." He goes, "But I really thought we got rid of it." He goes, "We never failed." So they bumped. They got another night of the hotel room. They came over and they're like, "What did we miss? What did we miss?" And Neil said, "We didn't ask God to come in and place his hand upon the house." So that night they went through the whole steps again. They got a hold of everybody. They prayed for us. And the next day, the only thing I could do for the guys was cook them a huge breakfast. And they came over. They spent the day. And when they left, it was weird. That house felt like it was cleansing itself. It felt like a whirlpool. And it felt like it was cleansing itself. The girls felt happy. Everything seemed to be great for almost 2 years. And then we started seeing signs that something was coming back. And since I couldn't work anymore, what had happened was my realtor called up her husband and she says, "Jay, teach him some of the trades. You can't do the work anymore, but my husband can." So between both of us, we converted the apartment back into an apartment, and we had gotten a renter. She wanted to get a long-term renter, and the lady was on state assistance, so she said this woman's going to be here for a long time. Within 6 months, she was begging to get out the lease. She actually called up housing and was begging to get out. So housing wouldn't let her leave. But when she left, there was a truck. Everybody moved out. So when she moved out, I called up Bob Baker, and he begged. He goes, "Whatever you do not go next door." He goes, it could be an ambush." He goes, "Oh my God." He goes, and he dropped what he was doing. He drove all the way to Shelton, Connecticut, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he was doing like 80, 90 miles an hour, praying that I wouldn't come over here alone. And when he got here, he brought out his cross and everything. He goes, "Now let's go next door." And slowly we went next door, and he said, "Aha." He goes, "She knew." And he showed me above every like little doorway, she took black ash. She made the sign of a cross. And he goes, "She was trying to keep something out." He goes, "She knew something came back." So Bob was scared. Bob's like, "Let's pray." He goes, "That this entity's not coming back." And that's when it seemed like a portal. I think she opened up the portal, but this entity didn't come back. What came through was some of the original owners that lived here, and some know stragglers. We have spirits that come through these portals that we don't know who they are, but they tell us their names. And some
That's
of them,
interesting. That's
yeah,
interesting.
really, really interesting. We had for about a month, they picked up
I heard now
Susan.
we had a lot of paranormal teams too, where had mediums with them, and they didn't want to hear anything about the history, and picked up or opened up a lot of things for us to think about it or to do more research. But we heard now multiple times too that whatever it was, what was here, is sleeping. So
Oh, so now that it's sleeping, you guys have opened the place up for people for research,
Yes,
right? Okay, so are you afraid? Are you careful of who you bring in there?
yes, we're very selective. We don't let anybody in the house. I mean, Mackenzie, it was Mackenzie's idea. After our last, yeah, we're gonna throw Mackenzie into the bus, right? Mackenzie, well, what happened? I'll tell you how we kind of got involved was, after our last renter left, they didn't even make it 6 months. They literally lost it,
Goodness.
had a nervous
yeah,
breakdown.
that was bad. I mean,
Oh.
not alone did they
It was,
destroyed the house. I mean, they literally lost it.
they took hammers and they were ripping the sheetrock open because they were hearing rapping on the walls. They actually took up some of the laminate flooring, and because they were hearing, and they both lost it. They said it felt like something was coming into the walls, coming to the floors. It was
But she
doing
called me
things.
in the middle of the night. She said, "What are you doing?" And I'm kind of like, sleeping. And she said, "No, no, you're talking so loud." I'm kind of like, "No." I said, "Well, nobody's awake." I said, "I don't know what to tell you." So I said, "Okay, I call you right back," because I thought maybe the girl's watching TV or something, looking around, everyone is sleeping. And she did that almost every second night. And she called me, she said, "You have to quiet down. You're talking too much." And I'm kind of like, "We are sleeping." So they really had a.
But the best thing is, guess who she sends over to the house to check it out? Me and Mackenzie. So we go upstairs, and I'm like, Mackenzie, I'm like, what the heck did they do? And she's like, what? I said, we opened up the closet door, and there was glass. Like, she took like a heavy glass, and she must have saw something coming out of the closet. That's all I can imagine, because it looked like she whipped the glass so hard that when the glass hit the wall, it exploded and left shards of glass stuck into the sheetrock.
Wow.
We had to remove the glass, and we had to patch the sheetrock up. It was like it's like something did not like them, and it wreaked havoc on them. So after that, I was like, I'm done. Getting a little bit older, disabled. I said, I can't keep going into a house. I said, you know what? We're not going to rent no more. I said, you know what? I'll turn it into a woodworking shop. I said, I'll bring my tools in. I said, I have a really cool woodworking shop. I said, you can have the upstairs for your craft room so that you can make things. And then I could choke this one right now. She said, what about paranormal? I'm like, what about it? And our friend Rose, who was Bob's assistant, helped her and said, yeah, that's a great idea. Why don't you open up and for something with paranormal? Everybody knows you guys. She goes, why don't you, keep the prices down and use it for paranormal research and let teams come in and do things. So I just looked at her. She was 16 at the time. And I said, you know what? If that's what you want to do, you got my full weight support. I said, I'll do whatever it takes. I said, to help you get the business off the ground.
I mean, her idea was to do an Airbnb, that was the first intention what she had in mind. Not kind of like the paranormal teams. It was more gauged to it. Okay, you want to sleep into a house where you maybe have some paranormal activity. That was kind of like her goal of when she decided or when she approached us. Why we don't do that? We're kind of like we learned really fast that There are event planners out
Yeah.
there, and they have other ideas. So we got away from the Airbnb, and now, well, she has now totally other ideas again. So now she
Yeah,
wants to
you
go
got these
more.
ideas.
Is there a website that people can check out?
The website is gonna be up like probably this week or next week. So
Yeah.
She had one. It was nice, but then I guess she inherited my perfection, and there's something she didn't like on it, so she closed it down, bought another domain, bought another website. I don't know what this is going to cost, but now she's designing it the way she wants, and now she's got a lot of support from her. I mean, she's quiet, but she's got a lot of support from Enfield High School.
Mm-hmm.
The news picked us up. NBC News picked us up a couple times, and she's just going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's really she did in high school. She took history, the Enfield history, and the Enfield history teacher here is really fascinated with our house. So for the last 2 years, he teaches actually the house.
and he puts it like as homework.
So, Mackenzie, are you the one to contact if anyone wants to contact you?
I am.
Okay. So, how did they get in touch with you?
So they can get in touch with us with the house phone number is 860-698-9535.
Yeah, or sometimes also the email or just a message over Facebook. And like
Okay.
they can send a
What's the
message.
email? They don't know the email.
And the haunting.
EnfieldCT@yahoo.com.
Thank
The
you.
haunting EnfieldCT.com, right? Okay. Yeah. You guys know.
But
Well,
the
you
next
guys,
few
I could have you guys on for hours and hours.
Yeah.
yeah,
We've only
we didn't
touched
even
the
touch
surface.
this much of it.
No.
Yeah, but yeah.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, and I just really appreciate you guys coming on the air.
Thank you for having
And sharing your
us.
story.
It was fun.
Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to have you back on. And when your website gets up, I'm going to promote your website as well. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Don't go away. I want to talk to you guys for a minute, okay?
Okay.
Sounds good.
So you've been listening to the Gateway Podcast, and that was my guest. They're the owners of the Enfield House in Connecticut. So the Gateway were broadcast live from United Public Radio, FM 107.7 FM New Orleans, and I am really sorry, you guys. I'm kind of tired. Coming up next week, I have a guy talking about EVPs, and it's going to be pretty interesting. So stay tuned, and until next time.